Hi, I'm Mike Ward. In this video, I'm going to give you a quick introduction to the McFAS database. So, I am in Excel, and I'm assuming that you have got in your, what do you call this menu here, a button called Add-ins. And if you click that, you're going to see the McFAS and maybe some other stuff in here, options available. Now, if you don't have that, it's because you don't have the database or you haven't uploaded it properly. You need to look at the video that deals with that. Now, if I click on the McFAS drop-down options here, you can see I can dump data for a company, I can list data for a company, and I can update data for a company. The last one, hardly ever need. Now, in fact, pretty much the only one you're ever going to use is really the first one. It takes a bit of time to do that, and so I have actually already done that, and I'm just clicking on the sheet. And I've done it for MTN, and what it does is it pulls out all the data in the McFAS database in a nice sequence here, so you can find codes and see what's actually there. If you do the second option, you get the list data, and what this gives you is just the actual dump of the database in a way, and you can see all it's got is a share code, the FAS code, that's the line item code for each item, and the date. And so it's just an access database, and if you run to the bottom, you can see there for MTN there are 6,467 items. So we hardly ever use that form of it. If I look at this one here, you can see we've got 1,269 items here and line items. So there's quite a lot of information. That's because this database is also used for mines and banks and other kinds of companies which have got their data. And you're going to see as well, if I go across to the right here, that my database goes up to 2018. When it starts, depends on the company. Some companies in the database will go right back to 1980. So MTN only started in 1996, and so that's when it listed. So, and my database stops at the end of 2018. Now, this data all comes from the IRIS database, which the Information Center has got at GIBS. We get it from there. And Chris databases it nicely, so we can quickly and easily have it. It sits on our laptop. Anytime you want to use it, you just use these functions, which I'm about to introduce you to. So that's a really cool feature. Unfortunately, it's only available for GIBS students because that's our license. And so if you want to keep using this, you have to remain a student, which has got other side effects. So you'll also notice that there are different revisions here. If I click on this, you can see there's published data and standardized data, and there's a whole bunch of blanks, which we don't really want. And so sometimes the standardized data used to be a requirement, let's put it that way. In the old days, you know, the financial statements were kind of not standardized, let's just put it that way. But with GARP and IFRS and those sorts of things, there's no longer need to employ analysts to kind of standardize the data that they used to do. So we can compare apples with apples in a way. So you're going to find that quite a lot of data is missing under standardized, because these days what's published is perfectly fine. So you need to just, if you're not picking up stuff, you might want to just go and compare those two and have a look and see what's happening. Normally, I stick with the published, especially if we're just looking at recent data. So, okay, so that's quite cool. And you can, of course, now search for stuff here as well. If you're looking for, I don't know, turnover, you can just come in here and you're going to see a whole lot of stuff relating to turnover. And maybe if you just scroll down here, you might just find the one you want, and you can have a look and see. We've got standardized, published. You can see pretty much looking similar, not exactly the same here. So there may be some changes there. I'm not quite sure what those are. In fact, what actually you can see the problem here. The standardized stuff is just copying the last data. So what you really want is the published stuff, which is actually now picking up the new stuff. So be careful with the standardized stuff. All right, now the whole point of this is that we don't really want to go into a database and search for stuff all the time. We want to be able to build a model. So we're going to take a clean sheet and we are going to come in here and we are going to choose our company and let's put in MTN as our code. And the first thing we want to do is we want to pick up the name. So we need to know the codes, but thereafter we can, pull out names and stuff. So watch this. If you press equals and you type in the letters MC, that's all, for McFAS, no A there, just MC for McFAS, you're going to see a bunch of items which are not standard Excel functions. These are all McFAS functions that Chris has built for us. Thank you, Chris. And by the way, you can tell the difference between a home-built function and an Excel function. All Excel functions are in capital letters. So if you're pulling up functions which have got lowercase letters, that's stuff that's been built and added into your Excel. So the first thing I'm looking for, and you can see there are a whole bunch of things here which enable you to pull out stuff from the database. And you're going to find some of these things are quite cool. You can have a look through these things here, and we're going to use some of them as we go now. So let's start off with the McFAS company name. So you just type in the Mc, and then you get the list, and then you find the one you want. Press Tab, it types it in. You don't have to type the whole thing, and then it needs to know where to find the name. So I'm going to tell it, look there, and maybe press F4 and press Enter. And you can see it pulls out MTN Group Limited when we do that. That's quite cool. Now, so somewhere down here, I want data from here, and I want to pull out the latest data in the database. Every time I go in there, it must update this. If I've got new data, it must start with the latest date for MTN. So I'm going to say equals MIC, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to find data latest date. Press the Tab key, and then I need to know what parameters it needs. And in Excel, if you want to know the parameters for a function, Shift, Control, and the letter A. And you can see it needs the share code for McFAS because it doesn't know which company you want the latest data from. And it optionally, it also needs the McFAS code sometimes, but usually we don't worry about that. So I'm going to tell it, find the code there, and I'm just going to delete the rest of that stuff. I don't need it. Press Enter, and it's going to give me a date. It doesn't look like a date, but it's an Excel date. If you push Shift, Control, and the hash key, it'll convert that into a date. It's just a formatting. Okay, so that's pretty cool. My latest MTN data is 31st December 2018. Now, I want to go backwards here. Now, we have to be careful here because you don't want to use the end of month -12 function here to pull back, going back exactly 1 year, because sometimes companies change their financial year. Yeah, that's always a problem. So we need to get McFAS to tell us what the previous financial year was. Probably going to be 12 months, but for some companies it isn't. So let's build a model which always works. So I'm going to say here equals MIC, and I'm going to look down here for previous year. That's previous financial year. Press the Tab key, press Shift Control A to see what parameters you need. And you can see it needs the share code. Okay, that's there again. And I'm just going to lock that down. And then it needs to know the date to go back from. I'm just double clicking that. And so I want to go to that cell there. And because I need to go back from that year to this one. And then normally it's going to be 1 year and the fact codes and stuff don't change. I'm deleting all the optional stuff, just pressing Enter. And it gives me another date, which I can format Shift Control hash. And you can see actually it was 1 year. But having done that, I can just run this back as far as I want to and press Control. Let's try again, copy and Control V. And I just need to go Alt-H-O-I to pull up just to widen my columns a little bit there. And you can see in the case of MTN, they don't change their financial year end. But we've now got it. And any company that changes financial year end, you're going to see it'll switch here to February or whatever it was. So that's quite cool. Now, we want to get some data for MTN because we're building a little model. I've got 5 years of dates and stuff. And what I'm going to do now is, let's say I want turnover. So I'm going to go back here to the McFAS codes because I don't remember which code it is. Remember, I prefer the published stuff. I don't want to use the standardized stuff because it's not changing anymore. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to pick that McFAS code there, and I'm going to copy it across to my sheet over here, and I'm going to put it there. That's cool. Now I can come in here and I can see what that code is. If I go equals Mc, and I look down here for McFAS tag name, and I press tab, and I say use that code there, and just press enter. It tells me that's turnover. Well, that's pretty cool. And so it's labeling these codes for us automatically, but it does need to know the McFAS code. Now, you can see I now want to pull out the data for MTN on that date for its turnover. And so guess what? If I say Mc, the next one down here is McFAS data. So I'm going to press tab, pull up the function, and now I'm going to push Shift Control A. Now you can see it's looking for the share code. It needs to know that. It needs to know the McFAS code. It needs what's in column A, and it needs to know the date. Now, because I don't want to keep typing these things out every time, I mean, let's do it once. I could go along there, click on that, press F4. I could come along here, double click on that, and press F4 3 times, and then I could click on the date, and I could come up here and click on that twice to lock it into the row, and it's going to pull out a number. That is MTN's turnover at the end of 2013. It's a huge number, and so I could just divide that by 10 to the power of 6 to make it millions. And then, of course, I must come along here and write in here RM, Rand millions, in my spreadsheet. I can then format this neatly. And, well, there are other ways of formatting stuff, but for now, that will do. And, of course, if I copy this across, it's going to pull out now MTN's turnover every single year. How cool is that? But I can make it a little bit easier for me because now I want to maybe pull out a few more items and stuff, and that would sort of work. But it's quite nice if we come along here and we actually label stuff. So if I put my cursor there and I type in here, and I have to be exact with this, by the way, share code, I label that the share code because that was actually what McFAS was looking for here. And I'm going to call this whole row, I'm going to call this here the date, because that is what McFAS is looking for. And then on this whole column here, because that's where I'm always going to put the McFAS codes, I'm going to type in here, sorry, not there, in the naming box up here, McFAS code. I'm using kind of camel text here. Notice no A's in there, McFAS code like that, and I'm going to press enter like that. Now, the cool thing is here, let's say I want, I don't know, let's go to operating profit or something. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to say, actually, from now on, don't bother with anything else except published information. And for this, I am looking for, let's clear that, sorry, and let's go in here and what we should operating or something like that. And I can say, don't give me everything here, but I'm looking for something called operating profit. And there's the one I want. Okay, so I'm going to take that code, copy it, and I'm going to put it over here. So I'm building my income statement. I'm skipping a few line items. I'm going straight to EBIT. And so now I want the label. I could just do control down if I wanted to, and then I can widen my column, Alt HOY if you like. And now I want to pull out the data. Now, if I type in equals McFAS data like this and push Shift Control A, watch what happens. Because I labeled these things carefully, there's the share code, that's actually A1. There's the McFAS code, that is column A, and there's the date, row 3. And I used exactly the same way of spelling and everything for these things. It's picking up the right rows and columns automatically. Now, in the old days, you could just press enter. But with the new Excel, it is struggling with arrays. And so I just need to correct this a little bit and put a little @ sign there, which is telling us it must look in that particular spot for each of these things. So it's going to, otherwise it doesn't know where to look in the array. And so with the new Excel, we actually have to put in those little @ signs. And then you can see I forgot to divide this by 10 to the power of 6 to get it into millions. And let's format it nicely again. And I'm just copying that across over there. And how cool is that? I've got my operating profit. And then maybe down here somewhere, I want to build my balance sheet. So let's do one more. And to do that, we're going to go back here. And we are going to look for something in the balance sheet. So let's clear those. And let's go back in here. And let us look for, I don't know, let's try total. Just go to the bottom somewhere and total liabilities. I was kind of hoping for total assets. There's a total assets. Well, we got a couple of these things, including, excluding tangibles. And you can see there's a slight difference here. Let's take it, including intangible assets over here. And we're going to come, where was our model? Over here. Dump that in, and then we can just copy that across there. And how cool is that? We're starting to pull out everything for MTN now on the right dates. As the database gets updated, this will change automatically, pull out the last date, give us the last 5 years of MTN. And if we want to change this to a SASOL, we just type SOL. And how cool is that? So you're going to be doing this when you build your big valuation model. You're going to be pulling out appropriate line items, setting this up so it's generic, can handle any data, and pull out the right stuff. So I hope you found that useful.